She bought the abandoned trailer with the last of her coins, thinking it would be nothing more than a temporary refuge for her 5 children, a shelter deep in the forest, away from pitying eyes. But the day she swept the rotten floor, she heard a sound beneath the earth, a sound that would change everything. You can imagine what it's like to lose everything, even hope, and be forced to live in a rusted shell in the middle of nowhere, only to discover that right under your feet, something or someone had been waiting for you. This isn't a movie. It happened in the Sierra Madre back in 1987, and what that woman found under the ground wasn't just a secret. It was a truth capable of destroying powerful men. Before we go further, subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because what happens at the end of this story will crawl under your skin. And tell me, would you have the courage to climb down into a dark hole beneath your own home? Maria Delgado was 38 when her world fell apart. Her husband, Tomas, worked as a seasonal laborer in the apple fields. The truck carrying the workers lost control on the curve known as El Espinazo del Diablo. Tomas never came home. The company delivered her a brown envelope months later, compensation. They called it 150,000 pesos, a pitiful amount that could barely feed her children for a month. It was the price of a good man's life. Now Maria was a widow, 5 mouths to feed, and no family left nearby. Her oldest, Daniel, was 12, trying hard to act like a man. The twins, Luna and Sol, were 8. Mateo was 5, and the baby, Rosa, still nursed at her breast. Tomas had been her anchor, quiet but strong, always returned from the fields with a tired smile and a small candy for each child. Maria remembered his last morning clearly, the kiss on her forehead before he boarded the truck. "Take care of the kids, Mari," he'd said. "Promise me they'll make it." She promised, not knowing that promise would become her curse. Without Tomas's income, the landlord gave her 2 weeks to leave their adobe room. She had nowhere to go. For months, they slept on the church floor, thanks to Father Javier's mercy. But whispers spread. The good families didn't like a poor widow and her children living in the house of God. When the church doors closed, Maria was out on the street. 80,000 pesos left, tied in an old sock around her waist. Her last lifeline. She wandered for days, the baby tied to her chest, her other children clutching her skirt. She begged for work, any work. But in a small town like Creole, a woman with 5 kids was an opportunity. She was a burden. No room for so many, they told her gently, closing doors in her face. And then there were the men, the ones who stared too long. At the sawmill, the foreman, a thick man with a greasy mustache, leaned close and whispered, "A young woman like you shouldn't have to suffer. I could offer you a home, good food in exchange for some company." Maria turned on her heel, her throat burning with disgust. "I'm looking for honest work, not pity." That night, they slept under a stone bridge, wrapped in cardboard Daniel had found. The mountain cold seeped through their bones. Maria lay awake, shaking, not from the chill, but from fear that her children wouldn't survive another week. The money around her waist felt like fire. It wasn't for food anymore, it was for survival. She needed a roof, any roof. One afternoon, she entered a small store called La Montaña to buy corn and lard with her last few coins. Behind the counter, 2 men talked over their sodas. "Still can't believe nobody's taken that trailer yet." One said, "The gringo who owned it, Howard, I think, disappeared years ago. The place is cursed." The other chuckled. "The town wants to clear it, but it's too deep in the woods. They're asking 100,000 pesos for the rights, but maybe 50 would do it. Nobody wants to go near that thing." A trailer for 100,000 pesos. Maria froze. She had 80. She stepped forward. "Excuse me, that trailer, where exactly is it?" The men turned, surprised. The shopkeeper, old Don Elias, stopped weighing the corn. "Senora," said one, eyeing her thin frame and the children hiding behind her skirt. "That's no place for a woman, let alone kids. It's 5 kilometers into forest, near a dry creek. The floor's rotten, the windows smashed. People say it's haunted. The gringo didn't die. They say he was murdered." Maria swallowed And if someone offered 80,000, the man laughed. That thing ain't worth 10, but if you're crazy enough to live there, I'll talk to the secretary myself. They'll take it. Do it, she said, untying the sock from her waist. Her fingers trembled as she laid the faded bills on the counter. My name's Maria Delgado. Tell them it's all I have. The shop fell silent. The men exchanged glances, but there was something in her voice, a mix of fear and fire, that made them nod. The next day at noon, the man returned with a signed paper. Congratulations, Senora, he said, handing it over. You're now the legal occupant of a 1960 aluminum trailer sitting on 400 square meters of forest land. The secretary laughed the whole time, but he stamped it. Maria stared at the paper in disbelief. For the first time since Tomas's death, something was hers. It might be a ruin, but it was hers. Can you take us there? She asked. The drive was rough, a narrow dirt trail winding through endless pine. The branches scratched the sides of the old truck. When it finally stopped, Maria's heart sank. There was the trailer, crooked on concrete blocks, like a dead animal in the clearing. The aluminum was dull, eaten by rust and moss. The door hung from one hinge. The air smelled of rot. Daniel squeezed her hand. The twins whimpered. The driver waited, expecting her to back out. Instead, Maria stepped forward, baby in her arms. Inside, the stench hit her like a blow. The floor sagged, black with mold. Rat droppings littered every corner. The mattress in the back was a rotting heap, but she saw past it. For walls, a roof, a place no one could take. It's perfect, she whispered. The driver blinked. Perfect. She turned, her eyes wet but burning with resolve. Yes, it's ours. When the truck rumbled away, Maria and her children stood alone in the forest silence. Daniel's voice broke it. We're really living here, Ma. Yes, she said firmly. It smells bad now, but this will be our castle. No one will chase us again. And with that, Maria Delgado, widow, mother, survivor, began to build a home from ruin. For 6 days they cleaned. Maria worked from dawn till her hands bled. Daniel helped haul the old mattress out, choking on the smell. The twins fetched water from the dry creek half a kilometer away. She scrubbed every inch, walls, sink, floor, plugged holes in the windows with cardboard, and patched the door with wire. For the gaping holes in the floor, she used stones and pine needles. At night, they huddled together on pine leaves in the driest corner, wrapped in their single blanket. Coyotes howled in the distance. The metal creaked in the cold. But for the first time in months, she slept with a faint trace of peace. On the 6th morning, she decided to fix the floor properly. The center was too soft, dangerous for the little ones. She and Daniel knelt down, prying up the linoleum with their hands. The wood beneath crumbled into black pulp. Then Maria's fingers hit something solid. Wood, but not from the trailer. She brushed away the dirt. 4 thick pine planks, set perfectly into the earth, forming a square. Daniel leaned close. What's that, Ma? She didn't answer. Her heart was pounding. She wedged a metal rod beneath one board and pried it loose. It lifted with a groan, and beneath it was darkness. A hollow space. A hole. A wave of cold. Foul air rose up. And then movement. A soft rustle. Then came the sound that froze her blood. Breathing. Someone was down there. She jumped back, clutching the metal rod. Who's there? She shouted, her voice trembling. Come out or I'll call the police. Silence. Then a whisper, low, broken, terrified. Please help me. Don't let them find me. Maria's knees nearly gave out. It was a man's voice, weak, foreign, desperate. Daniel's face went pale. Ma, what was that? She motioned for silence. The children huddled in the corner, eyes wide. Maria swallowed hard. Stay outside, she whispered. Now. Once the children left, she knelt beside the hole, heart hammering, and lowered a candle into the darkness. What she saw made her gasp. The hole wasn't deep, maybe 2 meters, but its walls were hand-dug, packed with damp soil. And in the far corner, curled up like an animal, was a young man. He was filthy, his face swollen and bruised, one leg twisted unnaturally. His hair, blond and matted, stuck to his blood-stained shirt. When the light touched him, he flinched and raised his hands. "Please," he croaked in broken Spanish. "Don't tell them. I'll die if they find me." He wasn't much older than Daniel. Maria felt something crack inside her. Fear, pity, disbelief. "Who are you?" she asked. The boy hesitated, trembling. "Liam," he whispered. "My name is Liam Hart." Maria stood frozen over the hole, the candlelight trembling in her hand. The young man below, Liam Hart, looked half dead, his lips cracked, his breath shallow. His eyes darted like a trapped animal's, wild and afraid. "I'm not going to hurt you," Maria whispered, though her own voice shook. "But tell me, what are you doing under my floor?" Liam swallowed hard. I didn't know anyone was here. I've been hiding." His Spanish was broken, but understandable. "Please, I just need water." "Don't tell them." "Tell who?" He shuddered. "The men from the sawmill. The ones with guns." Maria's stomach twisted. She knew who he meant. The guards of Don Rafael Cordero, the ruthless owner who controlled half the region's land and everyone on it. He was the kind of man whose name people said in whispers. And this boy, whoever he was running from him. She didn't know whether to feel pity or terror. If Don Rafael's men came looking and found him here, they wouldn't ask questions. They'd kill them all. Liam coughed, his body trembling with fever. "Please, Senora, just water." Maria's instincts warred inside her. Mother versus survivor. If she helped him, she risked her children's lives. If she turned him away, she'd hear his breathing in her nightmares. Her hands moved before her mind could stop them. "Wait here," she whispered. "Don't move." She climbed out, covered the hole with a loose plank, and ran to the basin. She filled an old tin cup with water and a spoonful of the thin cornmeal she'd been saving for the children. When she came back, she knelt at the opening and lowered it down with trembling hands. "Here, drink slowly." Liam took it with both hands, spilling half on his chin, gasping as the water touched his tongue. "Thank you," he whispered, voice breaking. Maria sat back, heart pounding. What had she just done? Daniel poked his head through the door. "Ma, who were you talking to?" She forced a smile. "No one. Go play outside." But that night, when the forest grew still and the wind moaned through the trailer walls, she couldn't sleep. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Every gust of air felt like a warning. And beneath her feet, she could hear him moving. By morning, her decision was made. She couldn't just leave him there to rot. She needed to know who he was, and how dangerous he might be. She called Daniel over and whispered, "Take your sisters to the creek. Don't come back till I call." When they left, she knelt again by the hole, candle in hand. "Liam," she said softly, "I'm coming down." Using the rough dirt steps carved into the wall, she lowered herself into the pit. The air was cold and foul, thick with sickness. Up close, she could see how bad he was. His leg was swollen to twice its size, wrapped with filthy cloth strips. His face was bruised, one eye nearly shut. "Who did this to you?" she asked. Liam looked away, ashamed. "I came to Mexico for a project. From Colorado. I'm a student, or was. We were studying deforestation. I saw something I wasn't supposed to." "What did you see?" He hesitated, eyes glistening in the candlelight. "The logging company, they're not just cutting trees. They're using hollowed logs to hide packages, drugs, guns, money. I took pictures." He drew a shaky breath. "Don Rafael caught me near a sawmill. His men beat me, broke my leg, and left me for dead. I crawled through the woods till I found this trailer. The floor was rotten. I pulled up the boards and hid." Maria stared at him, horror and disbelief mixing in her gut. If what he said was true, he'd witnessed something that could destroy Cordero, and anyone who helped him would pay the same price. "You can't stay here," she said quietly. "I know," he whispered, "but I can't walk. Please, don't tell anyone." Maria pressed a hand to her forehead. She wanted to scream. She thought of Daniel, of her little ones. She couldn't let danger come near them. And yet, she looked at Liam, at the fever burning through his skin, at the way his hands shook, and saw not an enemy, but boy not much older than her eldest. Her husband's voice echoed in her mind. Promise me they'll make it. How could her children grow up good if she let someone die under their home? She climbed out of the hole and stared at the ceiling, trembling. Then she whispered, "You're not dying here." The next hour was chaos. Maria tore her only spare skirt into strips, boiled what little water she had, and told Daniel to fetch pine resin from the trees, old mountain medicine for infection. Then, together, they pulled Liam up from the hole. He screamed once, a raw animal sound, then passed out. Maria laid him on a pile of pine needles in the corner and began cleaning his wound. The bone jutted out through the skin. The smell of rot filled the trailer. She gagged but didn't stop. She scrubbed, poured hot water, then pressed the sticky resin over the wound. When it was done, she sat beside him, hands shaking, praying the resin would fight the infection long enough for her to find help. Daniel stood nearby, pale and silent. "Who is he, Ma?" he finally asked. "A boy who saw something bad," she said softly, "and now bad men want to kill him. You can't tell anyone. Not Father Javier, not Don Elias, not even your friends. If they know, they'll come for all of us." Daniel's eyes widened. "Do you mean Don Rafael's men?" Maria nodded. "Promise me, Daniel. Promise you'll keep the secret." He swallowed hard. "I promise." That night, the children slept huddled together while Maria sat awake beside Liam. His fever was fierce, his breath ragged. In his delirium, he spoke in English, words she couldn't understand, except for one name, Mom. And in that whisper, her fear broke. He was just a boy far from home, caught in a world that didn't care. She dipped a cloth in cool water and pressed it to his forehead. "Sleep, hijo," she whispered. "You're safe for now." By the third day, Liam's fever hadn't broken. The corn was nearly gone, and the baby had stopped nursing, Maria's body too weak from hunger. She knew she had to go to town. She needed medicine, food, anything, but what if someone followed her? What if they asked why she needed alcohol or bandages? She thought of Don Elias, the old shopkeeper, the way he'd looked at her, not with pity, but with quiet respect. Maybe, just maybe, he could help. At dawn, she left Daniel in charge. "If anyone comes near," she said, pressing the rusty machete into his hands, "make noise, scream, protect your sisters." He nodded solemnly, his small hand gripping the blade. Then Maria began the long walk down the mountain trail. The forest was still, every sound magnified, a branch snapping, a bird taking flight. She felt eyes on her the whole way. When she finally reached town, her heart raced as she pushed open the shop door. "Buenos dias, Dona Maria," said Don Elias, his voice calm as ever. "Didn't think you'd last up there." "I'm managing," she said, forcing a smile. "I need some things, maize, beans, salt, lard, and alcohol, if you have any." My boy cut his leg. The old man paused mid-motion, his eyes narrowing behind his glasses. "Your boy?" he asked softly. "Or someone else's?" Maria froze. Don Elias set down the beans and came closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. 6 days you've been gone. Now you buy enough food for 7 people, and alcohol for a wound too deep for a child. Tell me, Dona Maria, is the one they're looking for hiding in your trailer?" The air went still. Maria couldn't breathe. Her throat tightened as tears welled up. "Please," she whispered, "don't say anything. I didn't know. He was dying. My children." Elias held up a hand. "Quiet." He glanced toward the door, then flipped the sign to Cerrado. The lock clicked. He looked at her for a long, heavy moment, not with anger, but with a kind of weary sadness. "What you're doing, Senora, is madness. You know what Rafael Cordero does to those who help his enemies." Maria bowed her head. "I know, but I couldn't let him die. What kind of mother would that make me?" Something flickered in the old man's eyes, memory, maybe pain. Then he nodded slowly. "You have more courage and sense," he said softly. "Maybe that's what this place needs. He packed her goods, maize, beans, lard, then added dried meat, cheese, and a small bottle of clear liquid. "This isn't alcohol," he said quietly. "It's mezcal. Stronger. Clean the wound with it. And this." He handed her a small jar of yellow powder. "Penicillin for livestock. Works on people, too, if God's merciful." Maria blinked. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I'm tired," he said simply. "Tired of watching that devil own this town. My grandson asked the wrong questions once, about the logging permits. They found him at the bottom of the canyon. Maybe helping you is my way of spitting in that man's face." He leaned close. "But listen to me. You can't stay there. The trailer's too exposed. There's a place. An abandoned mining camp 3 days east through the canyon. People hiding from Cordero live there. If the boy survives, go. I can get you papers, false IDs, but it'll take 2 weeks." Maria's eyes filled with tears. 2 weeks, she whispered. "We'll survive." She lifted the sack of food onto her back, nodded in silent gratitude, and stepped into the fading light. As she disappeared down the road, the old man muttered to himself, "God help that woman. She just declared war on the devil." When Maria returned to the trailer, the sun had dipped low and the forest was humming with insects. Daniel was standing guard at the door, machete in hand. His face lit up with relief when he saw her. "Ma, I thought—" She hugged him tight. "Sure, we're okay." Inside, Liam was barely conscious. His breath rattled in his chest. Maria poured mezcal over the wound. He arched in agony. A muffled scream caught in his throat, then fainted again. She sprinkled the yellow powder over his leg and whispered a prayer. "Hold on, hijo. Just hold on." That night, for the first time, they ate. Tortillas thick with lard, a few pieces of dried meat. The children smiled through tears. Outside, the wind moaned through the pines, but Maria felt something stronger than fear. Hope. Fragile, foolish, but alive. 2 weeks. All they had to do was survive 2 more weeks. Then she whispered, "You're not dying here." The next hour was chaos. Maria tore her only spare skirt into strips, boiled what little water she had, and told Daniel to fetch pine resin from the trees, old mountain medicine for infection. Then together, they pulled Liam up from the hole. He screamed once, a raw animal sound, then passed out. Maria laid him on a pile of pine needles in the corner and began cleaning his wound. The bone jutted out through the skin. The smell of rot filled the trailer. She gagged but didn't stop. She scrubbed, poured hot water, then pressed the sticky resin over the wound. When it was done, she sat beside him, hands shaking, praying the resin would fight the infection long enough for her to find help. Daniel stood nearby, pale and silent. "Who is he, Ma?" he finally asked. "A boy who saw something bad," she said softly. "And now bad men want to kill him. You can't tell anyone. Not Father Javier, not Don Elias, not even your friends. If they know, they'll come for all of us." Daniel's eyes widened. "Do you mean Don Rafael's men?" Maria nodded. "Promise me, Daniel. Promise you'll keep the secret." He swallowed hard. "I promise." That night, the children slept huddled together while Maria sat awake beside Liam. His fever was fierce, his breath ragged. In his delirium, he spoke in English, words she couldn't understand, except for one name, Mom. And in that whisper, her fear broke. He was just a boy far from home, caught in a world that didn't care. She dipped a cloth in cool water and pressed it to his forehead. "Sleep, hijo," she whispered. "You're safe for now." By the 3rd day, Liam's fever hadn't broken. The corn was nearly gone, and the baby had stopped nursing. Maria's body too weak from hunger. She knew she had to go to town. She needed medicine, food, anything. But what if someone followed her? What if they asked why she needed alcohol or bandages? She thought of Don Elias, the old shopkeeper. The way he'd looked at her, not with pity, but with quiet respect. Maybe, just maybe, he could help. At dawn, she left Daniel in charge. "If anyone comes near," she said, pressing the rusty machete into his hands, "make noise. Scream. Protect your sisters." He nodded solemnly, his small hand gripping the blade. Then Maria began the long walk down the mountain trail. The forest was still, every sound magnified, a branch snapping, a bird taking flight. She felt eyes on her the whole way. When she finally reached town, her heart raced as she pushed open the shop door. "Buenos dias, Dona Maria," said Don Elias, his voice calm as ever. "Didn't think you'd last up there." "I'm managing," she said, forcing a smile. "I need some things, maize, beans, salt, lard, and alcohol, if you have any. My boy cut his leg." The old man paused mid-motion, his eyes narrowing behind his glasses. "Your boy?" he asked softly. "Or someone else's?" Maria froze. Don Elias set down the beans and came closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. 6 days you've been gone. Now you buy enough food for 7 people, and alcohol for a wound too deep for a child. Tell me, Dona Maria, is the one they're looking for hiding in your trailer?" The air went still. Maria couldn't breathe. Her throat tightened as tears welled up. "Please," she whispered, "don't say anything. I didn't know. He was dying. My children." Elias held up a hand. "Quiet." He glanced toward the door, then flipped the sign to Cerrado. The lock clicked. He looked at her for a long, heavy moment, not with anger, but with a kind of weary sadness. "What you're doing, Senora, is madness. You know what Rafael Cordero does to those who help his enemies." Maria bowed her head. "I know, but I couldn't let him die. What kind of mother would that make me?" Something flickered in the old man's eyes, memory, maybe pain. Then he nodded slowly. "You have more courage and sense," he said softly. "Maybe that's what this place needs." He packed her goods, maize, beans, lard, then added dried meat, cheese, and a small bottle of clear liquid. "This isn't alcohol," he said quietly. "It's mezcal, stronger. Clean the wound with it. And this—" He handed her a small jar of yellow powder. "Penicillin for livestock. Works on people too, if God's merciful." Maria blinked. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I'm tired," he said simply. "Tired of watching that devil own this town. My grandson asked the wrong questions once, about the logging permits. They found him at the bottom of the canyon. Maybe helping you is my way of spitting in that man's face." He leaned close. "But listen to me. You can't stay there. The trailer's too exposed. There's a place, an abandoned mining camp 3 days east, through the canyon. People hiding from Cordero live there. If the boy survives, go. I can get you papers, false IDs, but it'll take 2 weeks. Maria's eyes filled with tears. 2 weeks, she whispered. We'll survive. She lifted the sack of food onto her back, nodded in silent gratitude, and stepped into the fading light. As she disappeared down the road, the old man muttered to himself, God help that woman. She just declared war on the devil. When Maria returned to the trailer, the sun had dipped low and the forest was humming with insects. Daniel was standing guard at the door, machete in hand. His face lit up with relief when he saw her. Ma, I thought. She hugged him tight. Sure, we're okay. Inside, Liam was barely conscious. His breath rattled in his chest. Maria poured mezcal over the wound. He arched in agony. A muffled scream caught in his throat, then fainted again. She sprinkled the yellow powder over his leg and whispered a prayer. Hold on, hijo. Just hold on. That night, for the first time, they ate tortillas thick with lard, a few pieces of dried meat. The children smiled through tears. Outside, the wind moaned to pines, but Maria felt something stronger than fear. Hope. Fragile, foolish, but alive. 2 weeks. All they had to do was survive 2 more weeks. The forest was quiet again. Too quiet. It had been 5 days since Maria's trip to the town, and though Liam's fever had lessened, the infection still lingered like a shadow. He slept most of the time, muttering in his dreams, while Maria split every hour between nursing him and keeping her children fed and silent. The days stretched long and heavy. The trailer, once just broken metal and rust, had turned into a fortress of whispers. The twins, Luna and Sol, barely spoke now. Mateo stopped asking when they could go home. Daniel stood watch from dawn till night. A boy trying to act like a soldier, machete never far from his hand. Maria tried to pretend everything was normal, even when the wind carried distant sounds that didn't belong in nature. Engines, muffled voices, the far-off echo of dogs. Each night, she told herself it was just the wind, but in her gut, she knew better. They were searching. The morning began with a strange stillness. Not even the birds sang. Maria felt it first, that crawling unease that makes your skin prickle before your mind catches up. She stepped outside, eyes scanning the trees. The forest air hung thick, unmoving. Then Daniel came running from the edge of the clearing, his face pale. "Ma!" he gasped. "There's smoke near the ridge, like a campfire." Maria froze. Nobody lived that close to the trailer. No one should. She looked toward the distant pines, where a faint gray curl rose into the sky. "Get everyone inside," she said quietly. "Now!" They huddled in silence, all 6 of them, listening. Liam lay in the corner, half awake. His voice was hoarse. "They're here, aren't they?" Maria pressed a finger to her lips. "Don't speak." Outside, the sound of an engine rumbled faintly, drawing closer. A truck, maybe 2, then it stopped. Doors slammed. Voices. Male. Rough. Confident. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. Daniel's eyes met hers, trembling but fierce. She whispered, "If anything happens, take your sisters and run east toward the creek. Don't look back." The boy nodded, gripping the machete until his knuckles turned white. A heavy silence fell. Then the crunch of boots on pine needles. "Closer. Stay quiet." Maria mouthed to the children. A man's voice drifted through the air, muffled but clear enough. "Check the clearing. That trailer's been empty for years. If he made it this far, he'd hide somewhere like that." Liam's breath hitched. "That's them," he whispered, trembling. "Cordero's men." Maria didn't hesitate. She grabbed the old blanket, threw it over Liam, and kicked loose dirt from the floor to cover the smell of rot from his wound. Then she motioned for Daniel to hide the younger ones under the cot. "Knock! Knock!" The sound hit like a gunshot. "Anyone in there?" Another voice called. "We're with the municipal patrol. Routine check." Maria's throat went dry. Patrol? No, there were no patrols this far out. Her mind raced. She couldn't stay silent. That would draw suspicion. But if she spoke wrong, it could end them all. She took a deep breath, wiped the sweat from her palms, and opened the door just a crack. 2 men stood outside, both wearing faded uniforms, their badges half hidden under dust. Their faces were hard, sunburned, their eyes scanning everything. "Morning, Senora," one said, tipping his hat. "Didn't expect to find anyone living here." Maria forced a tired smile. "It's all I could afford." The man nodded slowly. Rough place for a family. His gaze drifted past her shoulder into the dark interior. "You alone?" "My kids," she said quickly. "No husband. He died last year." The second man, younger, quieter, circled toward the side window, peering in. Maria's heart hammered. Beneath the blanket, Liam didn't move. The older one stepped closer. "You seen any strangers around here? Maybe a foreigner? Tall, blonde, injured?" She shook her head. "No, senor. Just foxes in the wind." The man studied her for a long moment. Then his eyes fell to her hands, raw and trembling from cleaning and hauling water. He smiled faintly, not kindly. "You sure you'd tell us if you had?" Maria swallowed. "Of course." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "See, senora, my boss doesn't like lies, and he pays very well for honesty. If you did see someone, you could walk away from this forest rich. 50,000 pesos. Her stomach clenched. She thought of her children, of hunger. Then she thought of Liam, the boy who'd whispered thank you through his pain. She forced a bitter laugh. "If there's a rich gringo wandering around here, I'd let him take me with him." The younger man returned from the side. No tracks. Nothing. The older one grunted, turning back toward the woods. "If you see anything, Senora Delgado, you come tell us." He emphasized her name, and the blood drained from her face. They knew who she was. The truck doors slammed, engines roared, and the sound faded into the distance. For a long moment, Maria stood frozen at the doorway, the weight of fear pressing down like a stone. Then Daniel whispered from under the cot, "Ma, how did they know your name?" That night, the forest didn't sleep. Liam tried to sit up, but Maria pressed him back down. "Don't move. You're not healed." "They're close," he said, voice trembling. "If they come again—" "They won't," she interrupted, though she didn't believe it. "We're leaving soon. Don Elias is getting us papers." 2 weeks, Liam murmured. "That's too long." Maria stared at him, the sweat glistening on his face, the boyish fear in his eyes, and felt the ache of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in months, hope mixed with helplessness. She stood and looked out the cracked window. The trees swayed in the wind, and somewhere far away, a dog barked. In that moment, she realized that running might not be enough. They'd have to vanish. The next morning, the forest gave them its warning. Daniel found tire tracks near the creek, fresh ones, pressed deep in the mud. "They're watching us," he whispered. Maria's heart raced. "Then we move tonight." She gathered what little they had, dried meat, cornmeal, a jar of water. Liam tried to stand, leaning on Daniel, but his leg nearly gave out. "You can't walk," she said. "I can crawl," he answered, grimacing. "I won't let you die because of me." Maria hesitated. Every path forward was death one way or another, but staying meant waiting for Cordero's men to return. They had to risk the canyon. They left at dusk. The sky burned orange behind the black line of pines. Maria carried Rosa strapped to her back. The twins followed, silent as ghosts. Daniel supported Liam's weight with one arm, the machete in the other. They moved through the trees, keeping low, stepping only where the pine needles muffled their feet. By midnight, the moonlight spilled through the branches, silver and cold. They reached the dry creek that cut through the valley. Maria paused, scanning the darkness. Then headlights. A truck engine, faint but coming closer, from the path behind them. "Run," she hissed. They scrambled down the rocky slope, the baby crying softly against her chest. Liam stumbled, his breath sharp with pain, but Daniel didn't let him fall. Voices echoed behind them, distant shouts. "Go," Maria urged. "This way." They slipped through the narrow ravine, hidden beneath the trees. The truck roared above, beams of light slicing through branches but missing them by inches. They crouched in silence until the sound faded into the night. Only then did Maria dare to breathe again. Hours later, they stopped to rest near a hollow log. Liam collapsed, trembling, his face pale with exhaustion. Maria knelt beside him, whispering, "We can't stop long. They'll find the tracks." He shook his head weakly. "I can't go on." She met his eyes, fierce. "You will. You've come this far. You owe me that much." He gave a faint, broken laugh. "You're not afraid of anything, are you?" "I'm terrified," she said quietly. "But fear doesn't feed my children." He looked at her for a long time, his voice barely a whisper. "You remind me of my mother." Maria didn't answer. She just adjusted the baby's blanket and stared into the trees, her heart hammering, because in the distance, faint but real, she heard dogs barking. Closer this time. Dawn found them on the edge of the canyon. The path ahead twisted into cliffs and shadows. The air was thin and cold, and the sound of the forest seemed to fall away into nothing. Behind them, the barking grew louder. They had nowhere else to run. Maria turned to her children, to Liam, pale, shaking but alive, and took a breath that burned her lungs. "This is it," she said. "We go down the canyon. No stopping. No noise." Daniel looked at the drop, steep and jagged, then back at her. "What if we fall?" She gripped his shoulder. "Then we fall together." As they began their descent, the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees. For one fragile moment, the world looked golden, beautiful even, and then came the crack of a rifle. The bullet tore through the bark inches from Maria's head. "Down!" she screamed. The children fell flat, screaming as dust exploded around them. Voices shouted above, rough, angry, echoing to the canyon walls. Maria crawled toward Liam, who lay half-conscious beside a boulder. Blood seeped through his bandage again. "Can you move?" she cried. He looked up at her with wild eyes. "Go. Take the kids. I'll slow them down." "No," she said fiercely. "I didn't pull you out of the ground just to let you die here." Another shot whistled past. The twins sobbed. Daniel clutched the machete, ready to fight even though he could barely lift it. Maria's mind raced. The path ahead led deeper into the canyon, narrow, twisting. If they reached the riverbed, they could lose him in the rocks. She grabbed Daniel's hand. "Run!" The family bolted down the slope, the forest exploding behind them with gunfire and shouts. And as the echo of bullets chased them through the trees, Maria knew one thing for certain. They weren't just running from Don Raphael anymore. They were running from the whole rotten world he'd built. The canyon swallowed them whole. Maria led the way, half sliding, half falling down the steep trail as bullets cracked through the air above them. The morning light cut through the dust like knives. Her lungs burned. Her arms trembled under Rose's weight. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Behind her, Daniel helped Liam limp along the rocky path. The boy's leg was bleeding again, his breath shallow and fast. The twins clung to each other, silent tears streaking their cheeks. The barking grew louder. The dogs were on their scent now. Maria could hear the men shouting orders. One of them laughed. The kind of laugh that didn't belong to a man chasing animals, but to a hunter who knew his prey was cornered. "Keep moving," she gasped. "Don't look back." They stumbled around a bend where the canyon widened, revealing a dry riverbed below. The stones gleamed pale and cold, scattered like bones under the rising sun. "That's it," Maria said, pointing. "Down there. The river will hide our tracks." Daniel helped Liam descend the last slope. Every step sent pain shooting through the boy's leg, but he bit down on his hand to keep from crying out. When they finally reached the bottom, Maria scanned the cliffs above. The trees loomed like sentinels. She couldn't see the men yet, but she knew they were coming. "Quick," she whispered. "Follow the river east. Stay low." For hours they crawled through the dry bed, feet crunching over brittle stone. The air smelled of dust and pine sap, and every sound, every echo of their footsteps, felt like it belonged to someone else, following close behind. Liam's strength began to fade. He stumbled once, twice, then collapsed against a boulder. "Leave me," he rasped. "I'm slowing you down." Maria knelt beside him, grabbed his collar, and pulled him upright. Her eyes burned with fury. "Don't you dare give up now. Not after everything. You said you saw what they were doing. Then you'll live to tell it." Liam stared at her, tears streaking through the dirt on his face. "Why are you risking your life for me? You don't even know me." "Because someone has to," she said simply. He said nothing, just nodded, jaw tight, and forced himself to keep walking. By midday, the sun was merciless. Rosa whimpered softly against Maria's back. Her lips cracked from thirst. The twins lagged behind, too tired to cry. Daniel climbed ahead, scanning the cliffs for any sign of water or danger. Then he froze. "Ma!" he whispered, pointing. Maria looked up. On the ridge above them stood two men, rifles slung across their shoulders, eyes shaded by hats. They'd been found. The first man lifted his hand, signaling the others. "Down there!" he shouted. Maria's blood turned to ice. She grabbed Daniel's arm. "Run!" The canyon exploded with noise, shouts, barking, the echo of gunfire bouncing off stone. They darted between rocks, ducking as bullets struck the cliffs around them. Dust filled the air. Liam stumbled, nearly falling, but Daniel dragged him forward. "Keep going!" Maria cried. The twins screamed as a bullet tore through a branch inches from their heads. "Left!" Daniel shouted, spotting a narrow tunnel in the canyon wall, a crack wide enough for one person at a time. They squeezed through, scraping skin and clothes against jagged rock. The tunnel opened into a hidden ravine on the other side, shaded by high cliffs and overgrown with vines. They collapsed in the shadows, gasping for air. For a moment, there was silence, just the sound of water trickling somewhere deep within the stone. Then Maria realized what she was hearing. "Water," she breathed. "There's a spring nearby." They followed the faint sound until they found a small pool at the base of the rocks. The children fell to their knees, drinking greedily. Maria cupped her hands and lifted the cool water to Liam's lips. His eyes fluttered open. "You saved us again," he whispered. She smiled weakly. "No, you saved yourself. I just refused to bury you." The relief didn't last long. As the sun dipped, a voice echoed faintly through the canyon, distant but unmistakable. "They can't have gone far. Check the ravine." Maria's heart sank. The hunters hadn't given up. She turned to Liam, desperation creeping into her voice. "We can't keep running like this. They'll track us before nightfall." He nodded weakly. "There's one chance. A cave a few kilometers east. I saw it when I came through the first time. If we make it there, they'll never find us." Daniel frowned. "How do you know they won't?" "Because I nearly died trying to climb out of it," Liam said grimly. "It's deep, hidden." Maria didn't hesitate. "Then we go." The path to the cave was a nightmare. The canyon walls grew steeper, the rock sharper. Liam leaned heavily on Daniel, and every step left a trail of blood. Maria's arms trembled from carrying the baby. The twins stumbled, crying quietly with exhaustion. But they pressed on, one step, one breath at a time. By the time the sun vanished, the air had turned cold. Bats flickered through the twilight. "There," Liam said suddenly, pointing to a dark hollow ahead. The cave mouth yawned from the cliffside, almost invisible beneath the hanging vines. They climbed the last few meters and slipped inside, swallowed by darkness. The air was damp and cool, smelling of earth and stone. Maria lit a small candle from her pocket. The weak flame flickered over the walls, rough, uneven, covered in strange carvings. Symbols, lines, circles. "What is this place?" Daniel whispered. Liam stared at the markings, his face pale. "I don't know, but I think someone used to live here." Hours passed. They huddled together in silence, listening for any sign of pursuit. Outside, the forest murmured with night sounds, but the voices had faded. For the first time in days, Maria dared to breathe. The children slept curled against her side. Liam lay nearby, eyes half closed, face peaceful in the candlelight. "You did it," he murmured. "You saved them." She looked at him, exhaustion softening her features. "We're not safe yet." Liam managed a faint smile. "You sound like my mom again." She almost smiled back, but then a sound echoed from deep within the cave. A whisper, then another, not from outside, from below. Maria stiffened. The candle trembled in her hand. "Did you hear that?" Liam sat up slowly, wincing. "What is it?" The whisper came again, low and mournful, like wind through a hollow throat. Then, faintly, something scraped the rock from beneath their feet. The twins stirred, whimpering in their sleep. Maria pressed the baby to her chest. "It's just the wind," she whispered, though her voice faltered. Liam shook his head. "No, listen." They fell silent. And then 3 distinct knocks echoed from the stone floor. Slow, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. Liam's face went white. "Maria, this isn't the first time I've heard that." Before she could ask, the candle flickered violently and went out. Darkness swallowed them whole. Panic set in. The children cried softly. Maria groped in the dark, heart pounding. "Stay still," she hissed. "Nobody move." A faint glow appeared near the back of the cave. Bluish, ghost-like, flickering just beyond the bend. Liam tried to stand, his voice trembling. "We need to get out." Then they heard it. A voice, not human but not animal either. A low, guttural murmur that crawled up from beneath the ground. Rosa screamed, "Run." Maria shouted. They bolted toward the entrance, the faint light behind them pulsing brighter, spreading like mist through the cave. As they scrambled out into the freezing night, the mountain erupted with sound, a deep, echoing rumble that shook the ground. Stones tumbled from above. They ran without looking back. By dawn, the family collapsed beside the riverbank miles from the cave. The The sky was gray, the air still. Liam's leg was soaked in blood. He lay back, staring at the clouds. "We can't stop," he said weakly. "They'll find us again." Maria shook her head. "No, not anymore." She reached into her pocket and pulled out something, a small, weathered camera. Liam stared in disbelief. "How?" "You dropped it when we were running," she said. "You said the pictures were proof. We'll get them to someone who'll listen. Maybe Don Elias can—" She stopped. Her voice broke, because on the ridge above, silhouetted against the morning sun, stood a man, tall, hat pulled low, rifle in hand, Don Rafael Cordero himself. He was smiling. Well, he called down. "The little widow's braver than I thought." Maria pulled Daniel behind her, clutching the machete. "Stay back." Cordero laughed, slow and cruel. "You could have lived quiet, Senora. You could have minded your own business." He lifted the rifle. "But you chose to dig up what should have stayed buried." The world seemed to slow. The birds stopped singing. The wind died. Liam struggled to his feet, limping forward, rage blazing in his eyes. "You murdered them. All those people. You won't." The shot cracked through the air. Liam fell. Maria screamed. Something in her snapped. She lunged at the fallen rifle near the rocks, the one when the guards had dropped the night before, and fired without thinking. Cordero staggered, the smile gone from his face. Another shot, and he fell. Silence. Only the river moved. Hours later, the sun climbed high, and the forest grew quiet again. Don Elias found them by the river, guided by smoke from the gunfire. He said nothing, just helped Maria load the children and Liam's still body into his truck. They buried him that afternoon near the canyon's edge, beneath a pine tree overlooking the valley. Maria placed his camera on the grave. "You made it," she whispered. "You told the truth." Elias stood beside her. "The papers are ready," he said quietly. "You and the children will leave tonight. New names, new lives. But not here. Never here again." Maria nodded, staring at the horizon where the forest met the sky. As the wind moved through the pines, she swore she could still hear it, the faint sound of breathing under the earth. The forest never forgets.